One of the things that makes heroes heroic is that they live by a code. So I'm going to talk about the top one, maybe two principles that you use regularly in your life that you run your business by. Maybe something you wish you had known when you first started out your own entrepreneurial journey.
Can I tell you five? So it's communication, respect, integrity, excellence, and discipline. Communication is by far the most important thing we can do. It just happened yesterday. It's so hard to read emotion through email and text message. So we had someone send over an email, someone else read it and just took it a complete 180 from what the email was even about. And so had we not have communicated immediately, it could have spiraled so far out of control. So communication, first and foremost, can eliminate so many problems. But then it's respect. And then, of course, integrity and the excellence and discipline. But communication, integrity, respect are massive.
Yeah.
Because if we don't have those, I don't know really what the point is of doing business.
Heroes are an inspiring group of people. Every one of them, from the larger-than-life comic book heroes you see on the big silver screen, to everyday heroes that let us live the privileged lives we do. Every hero has a story to tell. From the doctor saving lives at your local hospital, to the war veteran down the street who risked his life for our freedom, to the police officers and the firefighters who risk their safety to ensure ours. Every hero is special and every story worth telling. But there is one class of heroes that I think is often ignored. The entrepreneur, the creator, the producer. The ones who look at the problems in this world and think to themselves, you know what? I can fix that. I can help people. I can make a difference. Then they go out and do exactly that by creating a new product or introducing a new service. Some go on to change the world. Others make a world of difference to their customers. Welcome to The Hero Show. Join us as we pull back the masks on the world's finest heropreneurs and learn the secrets to their powers, their success, and their influence, so you can use those secrets to attract more sales, make more money, and experience more freedom in your business. I'm your host, Richard Matthews, and we are on in 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome back to the Hero Show. My name is Richard Matthews, and today I am glad to have on the line Adam. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. And before we get too far into the interview, I always like to start these interviews off with just a little introduction that you guys send over, so my audience knows who you are. So we'll get into that. So you are the founder. What's the name of your agency again?
So it's Inhouse Advertising. And no, I'm not the founder. My mom actually founded the company in 2001. And then I took the reins in March of 2017.
So over 20 years of advertising experience. Adam's the leading expert in media. You took over the agency in 2017. You've grown the agency by over $5 million in the last 5 years, which is crazy. You focus on results first and foremost, and the rest fall in place. I think gives us credit to Jesus for the success that he's had, and knows without that personal relationship, he would not be where he is today. So what I want to start the interview off with is, what is it that you are known for, right? What's your business like? Who do you serve? What do you do for them?
Yeah, thanks again for having me on. And yeah, you're correct. I tell people this every day. They ask, man, how have you guys grown so much? And, yes, there's been a lot of hard work, but without God's favor, we would be nowhere, right? So kind of back to your question, I tell people all the time that we really work with anything brand related. We have a website division, we have a in-house production team, we have 3 graphic designers, we have 7 salespeople, we have a 5-person digital team. So there's really not anything that we don't do when it comes to advertising. Our bread and butter is digital media and then traditional media placement, which, as you guys know, that is kind of on the downward trajectory in a lot of markets. It's still very healthy in Tulsa. So we were founded on a traditional media buying agency. And thank God we have morphed with the times and jumped on the digital train. So that's kind of what we focus on. We do a lot of brand guides and website builds and getting into the app development game. Really anything our customers need or our new clients need, we have the capabilities to do so. We're very diverse in our client base, from healthcare to event entertainment venues to restaurants and oil and gas. Being in Tulsa, there's really not an industry over the years that we haven't touched. And I think that's why we've been very successful, especially going into COVID, when some of the industries, kind of tanked to the bottom. our other ones, the RV industry, for example, we do a lot of RV advertising, and that skyrocketed, right? The demand are, well, you know better than anyone.
Yeah, we
That industry has just exploded. And so we've been on kind of the forefront, leading the charge with a lot of the digital tactics and media placement for that category of business.
yeah. Actually, it's really funny because we've been traveling in an RV for 7 years, and pre-pandemic, we didn't really have to plan. You could just drive around the country and stop wherever you want to stop, and there would be places for you to stay. And now we have to plan like 3 months in advance because there's so many people RVing that every RV park is always booked all the time. So there is significantly so if anyone's listening to this and you wanna get into a space that there is more demand than supply, RV parks. Good business tip right off the bat for, people who are paying attention. So I wanna talk a little bit then about your origin story, how you got into this agency. I know you took this agency over from your mother. So every good comic book hero has an origin story, whether that's, the thing that made them into who they are today. We wanna hear that story where, bit by a radioactive spider that made you want to buy into the family business, or did you start in a job and eventually move to become more entrepreneurial? Basic
You know,
story.
yeah, that it's funny. I would say I was bit by the freedom and money bug growing up in this business. My mom got into television advertising in the late 80s, early 90s, and while my dad was always kind of a blue collar worker, he could never get off to come to any of my sports programs during the day or school programs, and my mom could. So she had a lot of flexibility and a lot of time. And after a few years into it, she started making really good money, and it always intrigued me, and we always had tickets to every concert and every just every cool event we got to be at, and then we would be in a lot of TV commercials. Little did I know it was because she was too cheap to hire and pay a actor and actresses, so she kind of pimped us out for free of charge. But people would come up all the time in grade school and middle school and high school and say, "Oh my gosh, it's so cool you're on TV commercials." And I'm like, "It's really not that cool, I promise you. By all means, if you wanna be on one, I'll get you on one." And so, fast forward through high school, going into college, I knew I wanted to be in sales. I knew I liked freedom and flexibility, and I wanted to kinda go that route. And actually, I got to do an internship here in Tulsa in 1999 whenever the WB came to Tulsa. It was a brand new here in Tulsa, and so I got to go from when it was nothing to signing on a new TV station. And at that point, that was kind of the apex where I said, "You know what? That's what I wanna do." So I did my internship there, and I did from everything from master control to behind the scenes, seeing how TV commercials work, production, and sales. And it was always the salespeople that had nice vehicles and got to go to all the fun lunches and stuff. And so that's when I knew that's what I wanted to do. So after graduation from Oklahoma State, go Pokes, I went to work for one of the former sales girls that sold at the WB, and she was the general manager of a radio station. And so she hired me, and I had a lot of quick success in radio. And then from that point, moved to another radio group. I was there for about 8 years, dipped my hand in management, realized really quick I did not want to be a manager. So then in 2015, I made the move over to television, sold there for 2 years, and then started over at the agency in 2017. My mom was ready to scale back and somewhat retire. No, she still hasn't retired. I don't think she'll ever retire. But now I'm running the day to day, and we have 26 employees. And like you said in the introduction, yeah, we've grown by over $5 million in the past 5 years. And it's been a very fun ride. I've learned a lot. I failed a lot, which is good because I think without failure, you lose the opportunity to grow. So that's kind of my origin story. I grew up in the industry, and just through, watching and learning my mom and her friends and their lifestyle, and they never seemed to be too stressed. Like when my dad would get home from work, he would be stressed or angry or dirty or whatever it was. Now, don't get me wrong, live out in the country and I like to get my hands dirty, but I like interacting with people and watching businesses grow and coming up with concepts and ideas and, making someone's business better than it was prior to a strategy or a concept.
And so you got a fun story because you got to watch the business grow up as a child, and so the business is like second generation now, which we haven't
It
actually
is.
a lot of second generation businesses. So they say what it was an average business like doesn't even make it past 5 or 10 years, and here you guys going on a second generation for the business. Do you think there's anything special or unique about what you guys are doing that's allowed you to have a business that passes from generation to generation?
From the outward looking in, no. There's advertising agencies are everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Again, I think it's our foundation of being a faith-based company and putting that first and foremost. And then, yes, we are customer centric and customer focused, and we don't have a lot of turnover in our client base. I mean, our average client has been with us 10 plus years. Whenever I came over from the agency, I brought over customers that had been with me for my entire career. So it doing what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. We pay our bills on time. We treat our reps with respect. A lot of agencies are notorious for being jerks and not paying their bills on time and beating the reps up, and just the old adage, you get more flies with honey than vinegar, is as true today as it's ever been. And so we just do the right thing. And I call it leading red with relationships, excellence, and discipline.
I like that.
And that, I think, is what sets us apart.
And it was what allows the company to survive long term is actually providing real value in the marketplace, showing up well for your client. Like it's a mutual exchange of value, and you guys are just keeping that at like the forefront.
Yeah, correct.
Absolutely. So I want to talk then about your superpowers, right? Every iconic hero has a superpower, whether that's their fancy flying suit made by their genius, or their super strength, or the ability to call down thunder from the sky. In the real world, heroes have what I call a zone of genius, which is either a skill or a set of skills that you were born with, or you developed over the course of your career that really sets you apart and allow you to crush the villains in your client's life, right? And the way I like to frame it for my guests is if you look at all the skills that you developed over your career, there's probably a common thread that ties all those skills together. And the common thread is where you'd find your superpower. With that framing, what do you think your superpower is in running this multi-generational agency?
Hands down, adaptability. There's a saying in the movie Moneyball that I just love. It's called adapt or die, right? So whether that's with technology or employees or clients, if you don't adapt to the atmosphere that you're in, then it's not sustainable. So going in, whether we are pitching an oil and gas company, a surgeon, a hospital, a auto dealer, an RV dealer, if we don't adapt to their terminology and to their personalities to be able to read a room and redirect conversations and ask the questions in a way that they understand it, we're going to lose every time. So the ability to adapt and build relationships is what I would consider my superpower. And I go on a lot of sales calls with not only myself, but with some of my sales reps. And I'm amazed at how different everyone's pitch is. And it's very easy to see how inexperienced fail, right? They don't have it, whether they didn't research it, they didn't understand the audience they were talking to. It's very evident on those appointments. And then also being on this side of the desk, where now the salespeople call on you from TV and radio stations and newspapers and billboards, you really find out who has it and who doesn't have it. And so it's been very interesting. And I've learned a lot about people, which again has kind of helped me and molded my superpower, so to speak, as I go out and meet with potential clients on a daily basis.
Yeah, yeah, and I like adaptability too because it's very reminiscent of, like, every person has and especially in the business world and B2B, and you guys aren't all in a single category, right? So you guys operate in multiple different categories, and it's a language skill, right? Because every category has their own language of like how they talk. And then if you go further down than that, to like the individual company level, the companies will develop their own jargon internally and the way that they communicate about things. And in order to actually sell to them and get them the results that they know they need, you have to be able to speak that language, right? You have to be able to speak to them so they can, so they trust you, really.
Right. No, you're 100% right. If we were to walk in and start throwing out, jargon like cost per point, cost per thousands to a brand new advertiser, we've lost trust immediately. They have no idea what we're talking about. But if we can break it down to their level to where they fully understand it, then that's where trust gets, formed at that point.
Yeah.
Because now we're a true teammate rather than just another vendor that is trying to get their dollar.
Yeah, yeah, and I was like, I'd imagine if you're talking to, a chiropractor, they have patience. When, you talking to a car dealership, they're talking about like, people that are coming through the door to buy a car. Like they're different like modes of talking. If you started talking to a automotive deal about increasing their patient counts,
Right.
that's like super obvious, but like that's really the point is you have to know what are they talking about. Like restaurants talk about the number of covers, right? The number of tables that are being covered. And you have to understand the jargon of the industry that you're talking to if you wanna help them grow.
Yeah. No, you hit the nail on the head. Yeah. You have to be able to talk the language of the customer you're working on.
So, how do you teach that or train that to your salespeople in an organization? You said you have 7 salespeople, which is a pretty large sales organization. How do you make that I guess, a baseline skill set that your team has since you guys operate in so many different verticals?
Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into it. It's not, hey, my way's the highway, but going on and then offering, hey, I think if you would have said it like this, we could have turned that into a yes. And so it's just a lot of coaching and a lot of just hands-on learning. I'm not one of those guys that holds a weekly training in my office and not that. Like, let's get in front of the customer. Again, it goes back to it's okay to fail. There's nothing you're going to do that is going to, kill us. We can fix any mistake, so to speak of. And so it's just a lot of hands-on approach that I have found that has worked the best for us and how we train our people. But also, I don't hire a lot of rookie salespeople either. Most of the people that work for us have worked at a TV or radio station for 15 or 20 years, and they're ready to move their book of business over because maybe they've been with a media conglomerate for 15, 20 years and they keep getting their commissions cut, right? And they're billing more than they've ever billed before in their career. And corporate keeps cutting commissions to save costs, which again, I also understand now that I run a company. So it's getting those guys over and having them adapt to this side of the business versus a TV station or a radio station. And it's a learning curve. It takes a full year to fully grasp it. But once they do, again, I don't try to change them as a person. It's more their approach to each call.
Yeah, makes sense. So, when you're talking about you guys have an organization large enough to support 7 salespeople, I'm curious, do you guys treat yourself as your own client for lead gen purposes?
We do. Yeah.
How do you guys manage that to like, is it a 7 people salesperson team requires a large amount of lead flow, I would imagine.
So it does. It's funny you asked that. Until about a year ago, I would say our web presence was terrible. Our advertising budget for our company was non-existent, right? It's the
Oh,
cobbler's kids.
there
Yeah, yeah. Finally, I sat down one day and looked at what we were doing, and it's like, we've got some mouths to feed. We need to start putting our money where our mouth is and building our brand. So we're actually building out a podcast studio right now that we will do ourselves. We will offer it to our customers. We run social media ads. We run targeting to specific categories of businesses that we want to target. We do a lot of lead forms and landing pages. We market our production arm of the company. And so just as leads and call-ins come in, we get a ton of referrals, a ton of referrals. So we pass those out quite a bit as well.
That's really fun. We're in the same boat, right? My audience knows we run a podcasting agency. And it was just this year, we're like 5 years in, that we started our own company podcast. Right.
Yeah.
We'll call it something. Or like, we should probably have a podcast for our podcasting company, which is wild now. But yeah, it's one of those things that it's always funny that our own business seems to always get the last sort of like effort. And I realized for myself, that's why I framed the question that way. It's like we had to start treating ourselves as our own customer. So
Hmm.
we took our company and ran ourselves through our own onboarding process and through our own, like, put ourselves in our project management system as a client, like the whole bit. And I was like, nope, we are a client. It's just a client that's not paying us money, right?
Right. It's actually costing us
That's
money.
actually costing us money, which is fine, but we need to do that work, so and you guys same way, guys drive leads and whatnot, you have to do all the same work for yourselves,
Right.
so well, then I wanna flip gears, right? We talked a little about your superpowers, I wanna talk about your fatal flaw, right? So every Superman has his kryptonite, every Wonder Woman can't remove her bracelets of victory without going mad. You probably have a flaw that's held you back in your business, something that you've struggled with. For me, it was things like perfectionism. I struggled with perfectionism for a long time, kept me from shipping anything, which, then you don't actually have a business. Or lack of self-care, which really came out for me in not taking care of, like, having not good boundaries with my time, not having good boundaries with clients, stuff like that. But I think more important than what the flaw is how have you worked to overcome it so our audience might learn a little bit from your experience?
Yeah, man, that's a really good question. I could probably list 10 of them off the bat. Again, it goes back to the failure thing. I think I've always been ingrained in sports and early in business, like failing is bad, and I've learned over the past, whatever, 7 years since 2017 that it is okay to fail. And so, kind of what you mentioned, perfectionism is probably something that is my biggest kryptonite. I try to be something for everyone, and I'm a yes man. My wife tells me all the time, Adam, you've got to learn to say no. And I even hate to admit this, but like I would say yes to the detriment of my family's time a lot of time. A client could call at 6 o'clock at night and say, hey, I need this or this. And I know it's not urgent, but because we are a customer centric, customer first agency, I would stop what I was doing. And if we were in the middle of dinner or a birthday dinner, I would do it. And I learned really quick that I need those guardrails. I need to learn to say no. And it's a struggle I deal with daily, quite frankly. So I would say that would be my biggest,
I
kryptonite is that.
I had that for a long time, right? Work 15, 16 hours a day because I could, and, I always figured, if you worked more, obviously, you'd get more done, and realize, actually, that's not true. The obvious part of it wasn't so obvious until you start actually putting up the guardrails and realizing, like, "Hey, if I actually restrict the amount of time that my business gets, then it increases the productivity that time has." And so, it's like if you have, like, I don't even know how to like describe it for people, but it's like if you have this much productivity during the day and you give it this much time to do it in, and then you squeeze the amount of time that you have, the productivity goes up. So it's actually the opposite of what you might think. And that has helped me with that. And the other thing, what you said, that learning to say no, I actually found it was interesting. So there was 2 sides of it for me. One was learning to say no to my business in relation to, like, the amount of time I allowed it to have. And then the second one was in our business, learning how to say no for what we took on for business. And, like, learning how to say no to things that weren't a great fit for us, right? Because I know early on, and, I don't actually know, because you took over a successful business. One of the things that was, like, really interesting in, like, my earlier career is, young business that's not established. We said yes to a lot of things that weren't in our core competency because they would add
Yeah.
revenue. And it wasn't until we started saying no to things that were outside of our core competency that our business really started to explode. So it was like learning how to say no was a growth is a growth hack.
Yeah. And that, I mean, we deal with that daily, right? So our salespeople are contract sales guys, right? They're all 1099 employees. And so at first, we would say yes to budgets at $1,000 or more. And then realizing those people with 1,000, if all they had is $1,000, they took up so much time and energy. And the guys with 5 to 7 to 10, 15 plus thousand required so much little time. And so it was learning to say no to the low-hanging fruit of these guys with $1,000 and teaching myself and the reps that, hey, it's okay to turn down business for the sake of a bigger piece of business. That's been an interesting lesson that we've gone through really over the past 3 years, is establishing minimum spend and having to tell no to people. Honestly, it's a struggle sometimes, but at the end of the day, it was the right thing to do for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know what was interesting for us is once we started saying no to things that were outside of our core competency and realizing that like we could actually survive saying yes to just the stuff that was good, it also allowed us to say yes to more things inside of the areas. And then we were able to grow our business a lot because of like, now we have a really clear line of does this fit or doesn't it? And if it does fit, we just say yes to it and figure it out. And it took learning how to say no before we could learn how to say yes well.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
that's good.
So I want to talk then about your common enemy, right? Every superhero has an arch nemesis. It's a thing that they fight against in their world. And in the world of business, it takes a lot of forms, but we like to talk about it on this show in the context of your clients. And it's a mindset or a flaw that you are constantly have to fight against to actually get them the outcome that they came to you for. Right. And so what is that common enemy that you're constantly having to fight with your clients in order to actually get them the results that they pay you for?
So that's interesting. I would say there's 2 of them. So it's the client that think they can do it themselves because they've watched a YouTube video, in particular, like
Yeah.
social media ads, for example, right? Adam, I've been learning how to do this. I'm like, well, then if you can do it, save some money and do it yourself. Like, I'm all for that. 9 times out of 10, they come back because they realize there's a lot more that goes into it. So it's one, the people that feel like they can do it themselves is a big enemy. And sometimes they can, and that's great. I never want to be in the way for someone for growth. And if they can save revenue and do it themselves. But the second thing is time. So some people, and if we don't set up clear expectations, then they're like, hey, it's been 30 days and my phone's not ringing or people aren't coming in. Well, you're running a branding campaign and you're expecting immediate results. So that's where we have failed by not setting expectations with the client, or the client, their expectations are way too grandiose for their budget, right? Like they spend $3,000 a month and they're expecting $30,000 in revenue and they're selling cell phone cases. Well, that's a lot of cell phone cases to sell in 1 month. And so that is probably the biggest hurdle we have to go after.
I had a client that we no longer work with anymore, but we worked for a number of years that the head of the company would always be like, "I want to spend $1 and make 10."
Yeah.
I was like, it's nice that you want that, but that's not the way it works in advertising." He's like, "It used to work that way back in the 80s when he started the company." I was like, "But it doesn't work that way now."
No. Yeah.
And so that was a big struggle all the time. And I know, like in our agency now with the podcast stuff, the podcasting is definitely a branding authority, like trust building play in the marketplace. And it's not a kind of thing where you're like, I put out a podcast episode today and tomorrow I'm a millionaire, like Joe Rogan, right? Like it's just
Right.
like,
Right.
but that's
We wish we could be.
a lot of times that's the expectation is that like I see really successful podcasts. I start a podcast. How come I'm not really successful yet? And I'm like, it's the same sort of like expectation setting we have to do up front where we have to talk to them like, okay, this is the kind of thing that you start putting in the content and doing all the work now. You're going to start seeing the benefits from it, 6 months down the line, a year down the line. Like for our company, like when we started, like our other podcast that we run, we started that in 2017. And it wasn't until year four, we 8X'd our company off the back of the podcast. But
Wow.
it's like flat until it's not. And that's where like we talk to a lot of our clients about like, okay, how are you making money now so that you can invest in something that will compound over time and return a lot of value, but you have to be able to afford it during the first part of it to actually like get the work going.
Yeah.
Because branding and authority is different than almost any other type of advertising. It takes time.
Oh, 100%. It takes time.
It takes time. Whereas, like, with Facebook ads, at least, if I put the ads in now, I can know, in a little while whether or not I'm at least getting views or clicks and even work on things, but still, it's just a different game, and people, I think, don't understand, like, the different categories of advertising, and you have to be really good at learning how to manage expectations if you are selling in any of those categories, whether it's cold
Yeah,
generation or advertising, or I imagine even TV, because you said you guys do TV as well.
we do.
Yeah, that TV is I would imagine is more difficult to track and just to see, like, how it's actually working and what the ROI is, and managing expectations for that would be way outside of my ball field. I have no idea how you
No, and in fact, I had a speaking engagement today over training for some real estate agents and talking about content and lead gen and just advertising in general. And I said, I literally, we were talking just about that. And it was, you know, the thing about television and radio, it's so hard to gauge results, especially if you're running on multiple stations, right? You don't know if your radio drove them in or the TV drove them in, or what if it was ABC or NBC or CBS. It's just so hard to tell. But with social media or with programmatic advertising, we can tell in real time who's engaging with your ads and where those people are coming from, and did they fill out a form fill. If we are A/B testing two different ad groups, which one are they engaging with? So yeah, it's interesting, but it goes back to setting expectations, and that's something that we try to do with every client. And sometimes we have to, again, say no to certain clients that, much like you said, they, want to spend $1 and make 10 when they're selling a product for 25 cents.
Yeah,
It's hard to do that. And our reputation means way more to us than to take a quick dollar from someone and then have the reputation that, oh, they just took our money and got rich off of it, and they didn't care about my business.
yeah, and what's interesting about, like, what you were talking about, like, being able to track results in, some of the more the more digital advertising, like the programmatic advertising, you can get really good data. And the really good data can be attractive to the business owner. And then sometimes they'll take that and be like, I can't do that with TV and advertising, or you can't do that with like podcasting, or maybe even blogging, some of the other things that aren't as programmatic. It doesn't mean those things aren't valuable. It just means you can't track them the same way. And so one of the things that I found really interesting is like for podcasting in particular, and this probably applies to almost anything content marketing, that what you'll find is it'll actually reduce the cost of your direct response ads because you're getting more audience and whatnot. And so while you'll never see any like this is like really nerdy terminology that you'll understand, but maybe some of our audience won't. Last touch attribution go to the ads. It'll never go to the podcast. But if you take the podcast out of the equation, the last touch attribution costs go up. Uh,
Was skyrocket.
yeah, they'll skyrocket, and so, like, while the
Yep.
podcast will never get any attribution because of the way programmatic advertising, does attribution, if you take it out of the equation, it doesn't perform as well, and so
Right.
it's hard to gauge that with people and actually help people understand how these things work together. I would imagine the same kind of thing happens if you're doing TV and advertising all over the place, that your Google ads probably perform better if you're on the TV all the time.
Oh, I mean, yes, 1,000%. The using mass media to drive a lower cost per click. Yes. I mean, all that comes into play. And if we don't do a good job of explaining that strategy, then we have failed that client. Right. So we're really big on expectations and walking that customer through the journey of being fundamentally committed to advertise and what that looks like.
Yeah, yeah, and that includes, like, some of this stuff you'll be able to do direct ROI stuff for, and some of it you won't, but that doesn't mean it's not valuable or it's not doing its job,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
which, you know as well as I do, that's sometimes a hard conversation to have and to help people understand because, if they're not in the world of advertising, you're talking to a car dealership or a lawyer, like, they're experts in their area.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's very hard, and it gets harder with everything that comes out in technology, right? Being early adapters, like it's a very difficult conversation to have.
Yeah. That's one of those things, and I'm like, I'm still on like, and I don't know how to deal with this as a company yet. There's things like the technology is changing all the time. And so as someone who's doing advertising and marketing and content delivery and all these things that like our clients pay us for, like which technology do you have to pay attention to and which ones do you not? So like the biggest like real example right now is, like everyone's talking about the Apple Vision Pro, which
Mhm.
we're a content production company, right? We help businesses produce content for like all the major platforms. Obviously, the Apple Vision Pro is not a huge platform yet, but it's Apple, and every platform that they've developed over the next 10 years, they become big platforms, right? So it like how early do we need to pay attention to like are we building systems for this? Do we understand it? Those kind of things. And I imagine it's the same in like, a new social network comes out for you guys or like different ways to distribute things. There's always something new. How do you guys manage that, like, keeping eye on what's coming down the pipeline so that you're ready for it when it comes out for the clients? Because you guys are all the way back to, your mom started this company in, the '80s, right? So you've been through this a lot.
Yeah. So I surround myself with a lot of people smarter than me. First and foremost, that pay attention to the trends of the latest, greatest, you know, media companies and programmatic websites and all that stuff that's out there. But like some of the research we do, and then we follow national companies and trends who have way bigger budgets than any of our customers have, and seeing their results from it and reading case studies and just really following the numbers. And we do that first before we ever think about recommending it to someone. I'm trying to like,
Feel
I'm
like
trying to think of it.
probably the most recent one is, like, TikTok, like, exploded onto the scene in the last couple of years.
Yeah, it did.
Advertising aid,
And
you guys have to at least pay attention.
no, you do. And the ads are different on TikTok than they are on Instagram. And so it's we have to, have different creative, because a TV commercial is not going to work on the TikTok platform.
Yeah.
Same thing on Facebook and Instagram with the how reels have really taken off, and a more organic video, how versus a very high-end production. Consumers are smart. We do not give them enough credit. And so it's really finding out how they're engaging with the latest technology. And if we can get in there with excellence, then we'll do it. But if we can't, and we can't speak to it with authority and wisdom, then we don't recommend it,
Yeah.
you know?
That's I giggle with my wife regularly about TikTok because you can tell it as someone who does advertising, like you can tell when the companies are, I don't know how to say this because it's a strange phenomenon. They are professionally producing videos to look not professional.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Right, and I'm like, I can tell because I know the difference between a smartphone camera output and a professional camera output, and, like, when professional lighting is being used, when it's not being used, and I'm like, "That's a professional set." Like, but a normal person wouldn't know that, but I'm like, but it looks like a home set and stuff like that. I'm like, so it makes me giggle because as someone who's in the industry, I'm like, that is in no way an organic video. It's an ad that was produced by a really smart advertising company to make it
Yeah.
not professional.
Yeah. So on a lot of our production shoots, we will use cell phone, an iPhone, and shoot in 4K, but it still looks a little not fully produced,
Yeah,
just to capture content for the client so we can then post it on the channels, because we know that if we put a high-end production on there,
yeah, on TikTok.
people can see through it.
Yeah. But, like,
Yeah.
go to YouTube and you don't do a high-end production, people won't watch it, right? So you're like, you have to
Right.
know those things.
Yeah. No, and that's again, if we weren't on the forefront of change and the trends, it goes back to what I said earlier, adapt or die, right? If we're giving advice and saying, yeah, you need to run this cell phone video on YouTube about your new Mercedes dealership, you think anyone's going to pay attention to that? No. But if we run a really high end, beautiful video for that Mercedes dealership on TikTok, it's not going to work,
Yeah.
So it's just kind of learning those trends and what that research shows, and the consumer behavior when it comes to engagement on that stuff is really what we have to be on the forefront with.
Where I was like, I took my son and we went and demoed the Apple Vision Pro just to go look at it. And like after we played with it, I was like, this is going to be one of those devices that I'm going to have to like expense to the company and buy at some point because people are going to like it's going to change the way a lot of the way computing is done over the next 10 years. And at some point, we're going to have to figure out as content producers, how do you produce content for those form factors, right?
Right.
And so we're obviously, I say, obviously we're early in that game. And so it's nice to be early and be ahead of curves, but everything changes so quickly now that you just have to pay attention. You have to keep up with those things, especially when your role as a company is to help other companies stay on top of the current trends in advertising so they can get in front of their markets.
It is, but then it's also knowing when to punt and not get caught up and still be operating on MySpace.
Yeah, the stuff that is like flash in the pan or stuff that's dead. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like some
And
they don't last. I was like, what is it?
that's what I love about traditional television and radio, right? It's been around forever
Yeah,
and it still has hundreds of thousands of eyeballs in each city. And it still is. And people tell me all the time, "Well, I don't watch commercials or I don't listen to the radio." Guess what? You don't have to. They've got 80,000 people that watch it that could be buying your product, but because of your own ignorance,
yeah.
you're missing out on those guys.
You're not your own customer, right? That's one of those things that I like. It always it makes me giggle in the advertising world. One of the things that's really common is to talk to when people are trying to convince companies to advertise with their particular way of advertising, right? Like if I was going to go out and like you should do a podcast, a lot of times you'll see other agencies be like, email marketing is dead. Try podcasting.
Yeah.
Email is dead. Try podcasting. Right? Radio is dead. And I'm like, my thought now is anytime someone says insert some sort of marketing thing is dead, they're trying to sell you something.
Trying to sell. Yeah.
Trying to sell you something. Because the reality is like direct mail pieces still work, you know,
True. Do.
still works. TV still works. And it's like, I don't know about the yellow pages. It may or may not still work. Maybe
I don't think
my
so.
case probably doesn't work, but there's a lot of like, email marketing is still huge, right? Even though it's 30 years old now. Like if you don't have an email marketing position in your company, you're probably leaving money on the table.
It's one of the highest ROI marketing tools you can use.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's funny, Yellow Pages, about 5 years ago, my 12-year-old daughter, we pulled up to the house and there was someone delivered Yellow Pages and she was like, "What is this?" I go, "Well, it's for your little brother to sit on so he can be high on the dinner table."
Yeah.
I mean, blown away that it was that thick. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, people are still doing this." So yeah, it was
Yeah.
fascinating.
What's funny to me is like people tell you Yellow Pages doesn't work anymore. You know who Yellow Pages works for? The one company that's still in that category in the city. They're the
Yeah.
one that's getting calls from all the people who actually still use Yellow Pages.
Yeah,
Working for someone.
it's working for someone.
Working for someone. So I want to switch. So we talked a little bit about your common enemy. I want to talk about the flip side of that, which is your driving force, right? So just like Spider-Man fights to save New York or Batman fights to save Gotham or Google fights to index and categorize all the world's information, I want to know what it is that you fight for with your company. What's your mission, so to speak?
To brand the name of Jesus in all that we do. And it really is just to deliver incredible campaigns for our clients, to do it with relationships, excellence, and discipline. And by doing that, we fulfill our mission of what we are called to do as Christians. And I tell our employees, it's how we interact with each other. It's how we interact with this, our sales reps that call on us. It's how we interact with our customers. If we've got to treat people the way we want to be treated, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you type of mentality. So that's really our core values of why we get up and do what we do is to do that, just that.
Make the best damn tents on the planet, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Quick nerdy joke there for those of you who are not in the religious space. Paul is known as a tent maker in the New Testament and uses and builds tents to build his income so he can continue to do his work for the Lord. So in our case, you run your company. your advertising agency is your tent making.
Yep.
So I want to talk then about something really practical. We call this your hero's tool belt, right? And just like every superhero has their awesome gadgets, like their batarangs or their web slingers or their laser eyes. I want to talk about the top one, maybe two tools that you couldn't live without in your business. Could be anything: your notepad, your calendar, your marketing tools, something you use for your product delivery, something you think is essential to doing your job as the CEO or the one who's running the company day to day. Something you couldn't live without.
Cell phone, as much as I hate it, I mean, it is my lifeline to the world. It has my calendar, because if it's not on my calendar, it's
But
not
right?
happening.
Yeah.
Um, but then it's the way, obviously, I engage. It's how I research. It's how I find new customers. It's everything. That is probably the biggest tools that I have in my war chest.
What's interesting to me, something I ran an experiment with this, and as a C-level in the company, your job is not usually to deliver work product to clients, right? It's to manage the company, right? And to make it go forward and to like manage the team and the staff and the processes and all the things that are like C-level type stuff. And I realized a couple of years ago that one of the things that my laptop does for me that my phone doesn't is my laptop allows me to get into the work product and my phone doesn't.
Yeah.
So I challenged myself to do, I think I can't remember if it was like 6 months or 9 months where I was like, I'm gonna keep my laptop closed and only work from my phone because it'll force me to delegate, it'll force me to build systems, it'll force me to just think as like, if as an executive, what should I be doing to unlock other people so they can actually deliver the work product instead of delivering work product myself. It did actually. It forced me to do a lot of things and to really think through how I was delegating and how I was building systems and some of those kind of things. And, go back to being able to use my laptop regularly and whatnot for other things. And, I use my laptop for things that I had to use it for. Like I couldn't do this podcast without the laptop. But
Right.
but like for the day-to-day managing of like what's going on in the company, I was like, it surprised me how much I could run the entire company from my phone.
Right.
It's nuts.
Yeah. We utilize GroupMe, for internal messaging and things like that. So I don't have to really pick up the phone and call one of my employees unless it's a private conversation. But if I need to get out a mass message to someone, I can text, I can obviously call. So, I mean, I have everything on that device. And as much as I despise it, if it's not with me, I hate it. However, when I get home, I really do. I try to put it up on the charger. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier and being present for my family and learning to say no and having clients respect my work hours,
Yeah.
which is still very hard. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at it and that I don't check it, but I really try to, when I walk through the house, set the phone down so I'm present for my wife and my kids.
I've done 2 things that have helped with that. One, for me was being really clear because I'm like you, I still get on or interact with a lot of the sales process still. So I talk to the clients early in our process. I'm working on doing less of that, but it's still a big part of what we do. And and one of the things that I tell all of my clients is like, "Hey, I'm gonna tell you our company priorities or like our personal priorities." And it's like, it's profit first, right? If we don't have a profitable company, we can't do anything, right? Like we can't actually serve you. So it's like profit first, and then it's our family and our team and our clients, right? And it's in that order. And so, and I tell my staff the same thing. It's like your family comes before our company does, comes before the rest of the team. And I was like, so I tell all of my clients, I was like, if you're not okay with being fourth priority, we probably won't be good fit, right? And I was like, it doesn't mean we won't do an excellent job for you because we will, but the only reason we can do an excellent job is because we know our priorities. And so like what's interesting to me is I thought starting to communicate that to our clients would actually lose us business, and it's done the opposite.
Yeah.
We've gotten more clients that have been like, you telling me that on a sales call has actually given me permission to start doing the same thing in my company. And so I found that really interesting. And then the second thing is just more technical, getting one of these Apple Watch things and then setting up the notifications to be really strict on only emergencies from certain people are allowed to get through on it means that I can take my phone and stick it on the charger and leave it there and know that if something is dire, I'll still know.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it goes back up to the guardrails, right? And setting those so you can't drift too far right or too far left, but you have those warning things on the side that shake you to death, before you hit the guardrail. And so I think that's great. I love that idea
Yeah.
because I don't. I have, again, I have everything that just beeps at me. So if it is an emergency, I can run up there. So I'm kind of cheating that whole
Yeah.
thing, but
So just switch all of the notifications off on your watch. You can do it on your phone. Just go in there and just like turn everything off and then see which ones you miss and turn those ones back on.
love it. Advice. I love it.
Yeah, that's my little secret to that. And the other thing that I just wanted to call out, because I think this is interesting, it's really common. I asked that question, how many people respond with my calendar? If it's not on my calendar, it doesn't exist. And I don't find that outside of the entrepreneurial world, not as much anyways. And so it's really fascinating to me how important it is to run a company to manage your time.
Oh, time blocking is massive for me. If I don't, like this morning, I'm working on a big media campaign in Scottsdale, Arizona, right? Well, they're 2 hours behind me here in Oklahoma. So when I get to the office at 7, it's 5 a.m. there. So I know I can't call anyone, but it allows me to put together all the media plans without the craziness of the office and people coming in and phones ringing and things like that. And so by the time I finish that, it's 10 a.m. So it's 8 a.m. there. And now I can start calling them and put that to bed really quick because I've done all the work from 7 to 10.
Yeah,
And then it's just plug and play at that point.
a lot of sense.
Speaking of heroic tools, I want to take a few minutes to tell you about a tool we built that powers the Hero Show and is now this show's primary sponsor. Hey there, fellow podcaster. Having a weekly audio and video show on all the major online networks that builds your brand, creates fame, and drives sales for your business doesn't have to be hard. I know it feels that way because you've tried managing your show internally and realize how resource intensive it can be. You felt the pain of pouring 8 to 10 hours of work into just getting 1 hour of content published and promoted all over the place. You see the drain on your resources, but you do it anyways because you know how powerful it is. Heck, you've probably even tried some of those automated solutions and ended up with stuff that makes your brand look cheesy and cheap. That's not helping grow your business. Don't give up though. The struggle ends now. Introducing Push Button Podcasts, a done-for-you service that will help you get your show out every single week without you lifting a finger after you've pushed that stop record button. We handle everything else: uploading, editing, transcribing, writing, research, graphics, publication, and promotion, all done by real humans who know, understand, and care about your brand almost as much as you do. Empowered by our own proprietary technology, our team will let you get back to doing what you love while we handle the rest. Check us out at pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero for 10% off the lifetime of your service with us and see the power of having an audio and video podcast growing and driving micro celebrity status and business in your niche without you having to lift more than a finger to push that stop record button. Again, that's pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero. See you there. And now, back to the Hero Show.
So I got one more question for you here as we get to the end of the hour, and that's about your own guiding principles, right? One of the things that makes heroes heroic is that they live by a code. For instance, Batman never kills his enemies; he only ever brings them to the Arkham Asylum. So as we wrap up the interview, I want to talk about the top one, maybe two principles that you use regularly in your life that you run your business by. Maybe something you wish you had known when you first started out your own entrepreneurial journey.
Can I tell you 5 really quick? And they're on my wall. So it's communication, respect, integrity, excellence, and discipline. Communication is by far the most important thing we can do. It just happened yesterday. It's so hard to read emotion through email and text message. So we had someone send over an email, someone else read it and just took it a complete 180 from what the email was even about. And so had we not have communicated immediately, it could have spiraled so far out of control. So communication, first and foremost, can eliminate so many problems. But then it's respect. And then, of course, integrity and the excellence and discipline. But communication, integrity, respect are massive.
Yeah.
Because if we don't have those, I don't know really what the point is of doing business.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know the communication is one of those things that I didn't realize as a CEO I needed to coach my staff on until recently in my
Mm.
entrepreneurial journey. Right. I just thought it was like people would just pick up on it or they would just learn it. It's not that way. You actually it's one of
No.
your roles as the leader to teach communication and how you want to communicate as a culture and to actually build a communication into your culture. So I just realized that recently. And what is funny to me is as a principal, it's one of the things that I tell my kids all the time. I was like, communication is one of the few superpowers that you can develop, right?
Yeah.
you can learn to become an excellent communicator, and becoming an excellent communicator is one of the most potent superpowers that you can develop in any category, right? Doesn't matter if it's business or, or elite athleticism or like any category you wanted to. Communication is it's a superpower.
It is. And there's so many bad communicators.
Mhm.
And so, yes, part of our job as leaders is to teach communication. And it goes across the board from all genres and walks of life. If you can communicate, you can do a lot more than half the people out there.
Yeah.
And to be known as a good communicator is one of the best things that you can be known for.
It's the one thing as a parent that I spend more time on my kids with than anything else, my wife and I both. And it shows in the way that the rest of the world interacts with our children. They're just like, wow, your kids are incredible communicators. And I was like, yeah, it's because we put a lot of effort into teaching them how to be incredible communicators. And like I said, where it makes me giggle is I didn't realize I should do the same thing with my staff. Like teach them how to be
Yeah.
communicators because it's an important skill and it's an important skill everywhere, right? Whether, you're a toddler who's trying to tell your mom why you're mad right now, or you're a project manager working on, on your client's project, right? Like it doesn't matter where you're at. Like communication is the skill.
Right. Yeah. And not assuming, that's another thing it's very important, especially like when we're doing creative briefs or something, assuming the client's going to like this versus that. Well, communicate it with them and don't assume it because assuming can cost us a lot of time and money. So let's just nip that in the bud and communicate it first, and then everyone will be way better off.
Completely agree. Well, I think that's a great place to sort of end the interview. And I do wrap every interview with something I call the Heroes Challenge. And I do this to get access to stories that we might not otherwise find on our own. So the question is simple. Do you have anyone in your life or in your network who you think has a good entrepreneurial story? Who are they? First names are fine. And why do you think they should come share their story with us here on the Hero Show?
Oh man, I could tell you 20 different people right off the bat.
First thing that
All
comes,
my clients, right? So one of the best is Joe Davidson with Oklahoma Joe's Barbecue.
we haven't had any restaurant tours on here yet.
Oh my gosh, the guy, he was a welder by trade in college and built a smoker, actually 5 of them, and took him to the Oklahoma State Fair and sold out in the first day. And now he's got a massive company and sells smokers all over the world and he's in the barbecue hall of fame and has won every barbecue competition you can think of. I mean, he is one of the coolest stories of any of my customers and friends. So yeah, he's the first person I think of when you ask that.
Awesome. Well, we'll see if we can reach out and maybe get an introduction to him. Maybe he'll come on the show. We don't always get a yes, but when we
Yeah.
sometimes the stories are really cool. So our last little thing here is in comic books, there's always the crowd of people at the end who are cheering and clapping for the acts of heroism. So our analogous to that here on this show is we want to know where can people find you if they want your help, if they're looking for help in their creative agencies. Where can they light up the bat signal, so to speak, and say, hey, Adam, we really need your help. And I think more importantly than where is who are the right types of clients to reach out?
Yeah, I'm not going to say a certain category because again, we're really diversified and we work with so many different categories of business. But if you are someone that has fundamentally committed to advertise, and what I mean by that is you're ready to invest your money and your time into growing a brand, then that is first and foremost one of the biggest things because it happens. People have the money, but then they don't have the time to spend with us to do a full needs analysis, or they have all the time in the world, but no money. So those two things. And then they can reach out via our website, inhouseadvertisingtulsa.com, or they can call me personally on my cell phone at 918-361-6128. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us on Google or, anywhere really that you can type in a search bar. Inhouseadvertisingtulsa.com.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story today, Adam. We'll make sure that that information is in the show notes below for anyone who's watching the podcast or listening to it. You'll be able to find, those things so they can reach out to you if they want. And again, just thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story. I really appreciate getting to hear what you do and how you do it, and just sort of getting to hear a little bit of, how a multi-generational company is put together because, all of us in business want to get to the point where we can, have a company successful enough to pass on to our children. So that's it's
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your research into the company and just all your good questions. I really appreciate you taking time to get to know me. Means a lot.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much today, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of The Hero Show, where we work to shift the cultural narrative around entrepreneurship and celebrate the heropreneurs who make our world a better place. Don't forget to visit our website at theheroshow.tv, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or via RSS, so you'll never miss an episode. If you found value in our show, we'd truly appreciate a rating on iTunes. Or better yet, share it with a friend to help us spread the message of entrepreneurship as a force for good. Curious to learn more about the stories and insights of these incredible heropreneurs? Check out our in-depth interviews and resources on our website. Together, let's support and inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs as they embark on their own heroic journeys. Join us again next week for another episode of The Hero Show, where we'll continue to explore the world of heropreneurs, their superpowers, and the positive impact they bring to our lives. Until then, stay heroic.